It is strategic, driven by the need to reignite a stalled diplomatic process and turn attention back to a war that has slipped into gridlock. Behind him stretches the familiar backdrop of an airbase, wind rippling through flags, security personnel positioned along the walkway, and Turkish officials ready to usher the Ukrainian leader forward. The cameras track his every step, capturing a leader who has spent nearly 2 years navigating some of the most complex diplomatic terrains of the modern era. Today, he is in Turkey with an explicit purpose: to meet both Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and United States envoy Steve Witkoff, hoping to re-engage Washington at a moment when international focus has begun to fracture. As Zelensky walks toward the reception line, the importance of this visit becomes clearer. Turkey, positioned at the geographic and political crossroads between East and West, has long attempted to play a balancing role. It is one of the few nations maintaining open channels with both Kyiv and Moscow, which gives this meeting a diplomatic gravity that few other venues could match. For Zelensky, Ankara represents a potential bridge, one that could reconnect him with a United States increasingly distracted by internal politics and shifting global crises. The Ukrainian president exchanges greetings with Turkish officials before making his way to the waiting convoy. The entourage moves swiftly, escorted by flashing lights reflecting off polished black sedans. Inside, Zelensky is already preparing for a series of discussions that he hopes will change the trajectory of the conflict. The stalled peace talks with Russia have hit a point of near silence, and Kyiv is attempting to insert new momentum by ensuring that major players, especially the United States, are pulled back into the equation. As the convoy weaves through Turkish streets, the narrative broadens to the wider political landscape. Turkey has previously hosted negotiations between Russia and Ukraine during the early phase of the war, providing one of the only formats where both sides appeared in the same building. Though those talks eventually froze, the symbolic power of returning to Turkey remains strong. For the Ukrainian government, this visit represents a revival of a diplomatic arena that once held promise for Turkey. It is a chance to reassert its role as a broker in a conflict that has reshaped European and global security. Zelensky arrives at the presidential complex, where President Erdogan stands ready to receive him. Their handshake is firm, accompanied by the steady clicks of journalist cameras positioned around the courtyard. Both leaders understand the stakes. Ukraine needs renewed leverage, and Turkey seeks to maintain its regional influence. Inside the palace, discussions are expected to revolve around not just the conflict, but the future: Ukrainian security, NATO dynamics, humanitarian corridors, grain exports, and the wide ripple of consequences extending from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. As the talks begin, the voiceover shifts to the broader geopolitical context shaping this encounter. The United States, a central player in supporting Ukraine's war effort, has recently seen its internal political divisions grow, complicating the country's foreign policy consistency. Delays in funding, conflicting public messaging, and a shift in global attention have made Kyiv increasingly anxious. Zelensky arrives in Turkey not merely to update partners, but to urgently pull Washington back into a leadership role. The presence of U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff underscores that intent. His involvement suggests the beginnings of a renewed American appetite to re-enter dialogue, even if quietly. Inside the meeting room, decorated with ornate Turkish patterns and national emblems, the tone is serious. Zelensky outlines Ukraine's current strategic position, the need for sustained defense support, the importance of diplomatic pressure on Moscow, and the urgency of ensuring the conflict does not fade from the global agenda. Erdogan listens carefully, aware that Turkey's unique relationship with Russia gives it leverage few others possess. He has repeatedly framed Turkey as a country capable of balancing communication without compromising national interest. And today's conversation continues in that same calibrated manner. Witkoff's role becomes central as the discussions progress. The American envoy brings with him Washington's perspective, shaped by domestic pressures but also by long-standing commitments to European security. Zelensky pushes for assurance that the United States will help revive the peace process, emphasizing that a diplomatic vacuum only benefits Moscow. Witkoff acknowledges the concerns, noting that the U.S. remains committed to preventing the conflict from hardening into a frozen war. The dialogue signals a potential shift, one that Ukraine hopes will transform into tangible policy. As the meetings unfold, the film's visuals focus on symbolic details: flags of Ukraine and Turkey standing side by side, the slow movement of aides carrying documents into the negotiation chamber, the press corps waiting outside the ornate doorway, and the quiet intensity of the palace corridors. Every image reinforces the underlying theme. This visit is a pivotal attempt to unlock stalled diplomacy. The narrative expands again, reflecting on the war's broader impact. Ukraine faces a winter of uncertainty, with Russian strikes continuing to target energy infrastructure across the country. European nations are preparing for shortages, managing displacement, and recalibrating security strategies. The global economy feels the tremors of prolonged instability. Against this backdrop, Zelensky's appeal for renewed U.S. involvement becomes not just a Ukrainian request, but a plea connected to global consequences. As hours pass inside the palace, the film captures exterior shots of Ankara, busy streets, local residents watching news broadcasts, analysts in TV studios discussing what these meetings could mean. Public opinion across Türkiye remains complex. While some voice support for stronger mediation, others express caution about entering deeper diplomatic risks. Yet nearly all agree on one point. Türkiye occupies a rare position of influence in this conflict. Back inside, the negotiating teams begin shaping a joint understanding. Zelensky emphasizes Ukraine's commitment to a just peace, a peace that respects sovereignty, ensures territorial integrity, and prevents any precedent of forced annexation from being normalized. Erdogan communicates Türkiye's readiness to facilitate new rounds of negotiation if both sides agree. Witkoff raises the issue of confidence-building measures that could potentially reopen channels with Washington's participation. The document-style narration continues, weaving through scenes of aides typing notes, interpreters sitting between delegations, and brief moments where leaders pause to consider their next words. Each frame underlines the weight of diplomacy conducted under the pressure of war. Zelensky's tone carries a mixture of urgency and endurance, reflecting a leader whose country remains in the line of fire daily. As the discussions reach a more substantive phase, the voiceover highlights key themes expected to emerge in any revived peace framework: prisoner exchanges, security guarantees, humanitarian corridors, nuclear safety, and potential international oversight. These are complex issues requiring multi-layered involvement, which is exactly why Zelensky is pushing to pull the United States back to the table. The visuals then transition back to the city as evening begins to settle over Ankara. The sky dims into soft hues, and the palace's tall columns cast long shadows across the courtyard. As Zelensky steps outside after hours of discussion, a different tone colours his expression, still serious but carrying a sense of having advanced a step forward. He knows the road ahead remains fraught, yet every diplomatic engagement is a chance to shift momentum. Journalists gather quickly as the Ukrainian president makes brief remarks. He speaks about strengthening cooperation with Türkiye, about efforts to bring the United States back into active diplomacy, and about ensuring that Ukraine continues to defend not only its territory, but the principles underpinning international law. Though his words are concise, they carry clear intent. Ukraine refuses to let the world move on from this conflict. The camera follows him as he returns to the convoy, heading back toward the airbase. Night has now fallen, but the runway lights illuminate the aircraft that brought him here, a reminder that diplomacy often moves through long, exhausting hours. As Zelensky prepares to depart Türkiye, the voiceover reflects on the significance of the visit. This was not simply a diplomatic courtesy call. It was a calculated, strategic move aimed at reviving channels that have gone quiet, pulling long-standing allies back into decisive roles, and leveraging Türkiye's unique position to restart momentum toward a peace process that has stalled dangerously. The jet engines ignite in a rising hum as the Ukrainian delegation prepares for takeoff. Before boarding, Zelensky pauses briefly, surveying the scene. Security teams, journalists, the shimmering lights of Ankara behind him. This moment, though seemingly routine, encapsulates the weight of leadership during war. Constant movement, constant negotiation, constant balancing of hope and strategy. As the plane lifts off into the dark sky, the narrative widens once more to the global implications. Ukraine's war remains a defining challenge for Europe, NATO, and the international order. Türkiye's mediation offers a potential pathway, but only if major powers recommit to active involvement. Zelensky's mission today was to ensure that the United States, despite mounting pressures and distractions, does not step back from the central diplomatic arena. The aircraft ascends, leaving Türkiye behind, but carrying with it the outcomes of the day's discussions, some concrete, others still forming. The flight back to Ukraine becomes symbolic of the broader journey ahead. long, uncertain, but propelled by the determination of a nation unwilling to surrender its future. And as the screen slowly fades to black, the voiceover delivers its final reflection. Diplomacy remains the battlefield where the shape of tomorrow is decided. And today in Türkiye, a crucial step toward that tomorrow was taken.